This video is on solving percent problems. It's lesson 42 in your book. A percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100, or to parts of a whole. For example, 50% is the ratio 50 out of, or divided by, 100. Another example would be 25% of 20 is 5, because 25 out of 100 is the same as 5 out of 20. They are comparable. Now we can use an equation to find a percent. Now we've already actually been doing some of these problems and setting them up. So this says, what number is 25% of 50? This is an example that needs to be in your notebook, by the way. So what number is 25% of 50? Now, whenever we see this what number, that tells us that there's a number there that we don't know. So we can use a variable. Now I'm going to call my variable x. So what number is x? Then it says is. Now is a word that we use to mean equals. Then we have 25%. Now whenever we are doing percent problems, our percentage needs to be put in decimal form. So here's our decimal, and we need to move it 2 places to the left. So here to here. And we get 0.25. And then it says of, and of means multiplication, so times, and then 50. So we have what number is 25% of times 50. And this is an easy equation to solve because we have x equals 0.25 times 50. Now when we multiply 0.25 times 50, we get 12.5. So our number that we're looking for is 12.5. Here's another example that needs to be in your notebook. We're looking for what number is 125% of 64. Now here's this what number. Again, that tells us we're going to need a variable, so equals. Here's, x. Here's is, and is tells us we're going to use equals. So x equals, or what number is, 125% needs to be turned into a decimal, so we have a decimal point right here that we need to move 2 places to the left. So 1, 2. So we actually have 1.25. It's important to remember that whenever your percentage is over 100%, you're going to have a number that's equal to or greater than 1. 125% is 1.25. Then we've got of, which is multiplication, and finally 64. So the number we're looking for is 1.25 times 64. And when we multiply those two numbers, we get that x, or the number we're looking for, equals 80. So 80 is 125% of 64. And we know that this is reasonable because since it's bigger than 100%, this number should be larger than our original 64. Alright, so percentages can also be set up as proportions. Now, we set it up as the part divided by the whole equals the percent, or the percent over 100, because a percent is always over 100. So, for example, 10% of 50 is 5, can be set up as 10% would be 10 over 100, equals, and now we're finding a percent of 50, so 50 is our whole, it goes in the denominator, and 5 is the part. So 10% of 100, or 10 of 100, is the same as 5 of 50. We can use that setup to solve some percentage problems also. So here we want to find out what number is 125% of 48. Now 125% is our percentage, it's going to be over 100. And 48 is going to be our whole, or our denominator, when we solve this. This is an example that needs to be in your notebook. So we have our percent, which is 125, out of our whole, which is always 100. And it equals, now on this other side, we want to put the whole in the denominator, just like we did here. So our whole here is 48. And then we're looking for what number is 125% of that. Now, proportion we can solve using cross multiplication. So when I do this, I get 100x equals 125 times 48, which is 6,000. And then in order to solve for x, I can divide both sides by 100. Now, I've got two zeros that cancel out, and basically I've got 60 divided by 1. So that means that my x is 60. So 60 is 125% of 48. And notice that that makes sense because 125% should be bigger than 48, and it is. Here's another example that needs to go in your notebook. We need to know 15 is what percent of 45. Now in this case, we actually have the part, and we have the whole, and we're looking for what is the percent. So we have 15 is the part over the whole, which is 45, and it equals, now we don't know the percent, but we do know that the whole in a percent is 100. So now we've set up a proportion, and we can use that to find our percentage by cross multiplying. So we have 45 times x, which is 45x, and it equals 15 times 100, and we know 15 times 100 is 1500. Now in order to get x by itself, I have to divide both sides by 45. And when I take 1500 divided by 45, I get 33.3%. And it's actually 33.3 repeating percent, but it's okay to round when you're using percentages. Here we have an application in wages. It says Anna receives $1,153.84 in gross earnings every 2 weeks. However, 28.07% of the gross earnings is removed for taxes and other deductions. Using an equation, determine the net pay. Now they want us to use an equation here to determine her net pay, or how much she actually takes home. So gross is how much her check is before taxes and deductions. Net is how much she actually gets of that gross pay. So what we have is we want to find out her net pay. Now, there are a couple of ways that we can do this. We can figure out how much she pays in taxes and deductions and subtract that from her original amount, but it's actually going to be easier to figure out what percentage that she's actually paid. So if they take out 28.07% in taxes, then that means she actually gets 100 minus 28.07%, because she starts out with that full 100%, and then they take away or subtract 28.07. Now 100 minus 28.07 is 71.93. Now this means that she is getting 71.93% of her paycheck as her net pay. Now all we need to find out is what is 71.93% of her gross earnings. So what number x is or equals 71.93%, and to use it as a decimal, I have to move the decimal place to the left, so 0.7193 of her original paycheck, which is $1153.84. So I'm going to need to multiply the percentage that she actually gets paid times her original paycheck. So 1153.84 times 0.7193 comes out to about $829, and my decimal point is 0.957. Now normally I would round up to 0.96 for pennies there, but since they are taking money out, they're going to take out that whole cent, even if she should get 7/10 of it. So she's going to get $829.95. Here's another application, and this is our last example that needs to be in your notebook. Dominic earns $9.25 an hour working part-time. The circle graph shows how he divides his earnings. This month, Dominic has worked a total of 54 hours. Find the amount of Dominic's earnings that will be put into savings this month. Alright, so we know from this circle graph that he puts 40% of his income in savings. Now, in order to figure out what 40% of his income is, first we have to figure out how much money has he made. He makes $9.25 per hour, and he has worked 54 hours. So he's got $9.25 for every 1 hour, and he's working a total of 54 hours. Now, notice my hours cancel, and I've got 925 divided by 1 times 54, which means he has made $499.50. So this is his total income. Now, we know that he's going to put 40% of the $499.50 into savings. So since we want to find 40% of $499.50, we're going to multiply 0.4, or 40%, times, because of means times, $499.50. When we multiply those two numbers, we get 199.8, or 0.80. So he's going to put $199.80 into savings.